I was brought up in England, in Surrey. My dad's a Muslim from Baghdad and my mum is from England, so it was quite hard growing up with two different cultures and growing up in England with a very strict Muslim influence. I was told that I was drunk before I could walk. I remember being very young and being at a party and drinking sherry, and then I went round the room drinking everybody else's leftover drinks. But no one really minded because it shut me up. And my dad always used to say as well, if you drink a lot now, it'll stop you from over-drinking when you're older. So, yeah, and whenever I could, I used to drink. But I never got drunk. I seem to have a really high tolerance for alcohol. And what happened when I drank was I talked more and felt more comfortable in myself and then, therefore, feeling more accepted. Because I was criticised a lot as a kid for not talking enough. And so when I drank, it just seemed to ease that, and I used to just open up and talk, and then it got to the point where I used to have a couple of drinks before even going out just to feel accepted, really. I first did cocaine when I was about 16. It was in some random bar in Spain, and then when I got back to London I got a job working in a bar and there was loads of coke going around there, and so I ended up obviously doing a lot there as well. And then I also got into ease and speed, and I just found ecstasy gave me so much confidence and made me feel really amazing about myself. The only problem with it was I used to get really depressed afterwards, so the after effects really, really didn't work for me at all. And then I was in a club one night and I bumped into a drug dealer and I ended up seeing him, and I was doing about 5 E's a night, and then the problem with that was I would go out and drink and completely lose count of how much I drank. I had an eating disorder as well. That started when I was about 19 and I used to eat and then throw up. I was always told I was fat, so being thin was really, really important to me because I just thought I'd be accepted if I was. So the drugs really helped with the weight loss, obviously. The more speed I did, the more I lost my appetite, and I went to university and I'd come back after uni and eat loads, throw up loads, and then get ready to go out where I'd end up doing more drugs. It started with me throwing up once a day, then twice a day, then it got up to about 15 to 20 times a day. And it just got progressively worse. Then I got seriously into crack, and it was a kind of drug that I just couldn't get enough of, basically. And I'd go to work on a Thursday and then end up going for drinks after work on Thursday or Friday, and I'd always end up on crack by the end of those nights, and I couldn't work the next day. So I'd take crack, I'd be up with it all weekend, having not slept and not eaten, and I just couldn't work. I mean, with other drugs, you know, with a hangover, you can work. With a coke binge, you can work. With crack, I just found I just couldn't. It was just too, you know, the craving was just so overpowering, and so I ended up taking a day off work at least every single week. I just didn't want to live. And it's like when you get into that place in your head where you think about killing yourself and you think, I can't because there's this like rock solid fence in front of me. And then the thoughts come back and it's really scary. And I just thought, I just don't want to live. I'd heard of these places in the past, treatment centres, so I did a little bit of research on the internet. I got a taxi to LifeWorks and the sign outside says New Beginnings or something, and the taxi man said to me, oh, so have you come here for a new life or something like that? And he had absolutely no idea where I was going, and neither did I. This woman came up to me, she was really friendly, she told me what was going to happen, she took me upstairs, she said she was going to look through my case, she was going to weigh me, and there were some other girls there and they were really nice and really friendly, and we got chatting, and then it got a bit scary because I realised we were going to have to eat. It was lunchtime, I guess, because we had to go down and sit at a table and we had to write down how we felt whilst we were eating and how we felt after we ate, which was a completely new thing for me. And you had to write down what you wanted and what you didn't want. And I just remember wanting a drink because I hadn't had a drink all day. So the first few weeks of my meal diaries were about me saying I wanted a drink because you don't eat. And I had to eat the food, so I thought, OK, I'll just eat this bit and I'll put a bit to the side because I knew I couldn't throw it all up. And there was a counsellor there and she said to me, you have to eat that. And I looked at the other girls and they were all eating everything and they weren't huge or anything. So I just thought, well, okay, I have to do that. And if I do that and they're not fat, then maybe I won't balloon either. I asked the other girls who'd been there about 2 weeks, well, don't you get fat? Don't you put on weight? And they said to me, well, no, you don't, because this is what normal people eat every day. And no, you're not going to get fat. So if I just do what I'm told, I'm going to be okay, is what I thought. And it really helped having other girls there that had the same fears as me about eating, because I'd never really had a friend that I could talk to about it. So it really helped having people there that I could talk to. And there were other people there with problems other than food, but there was always somebody that covered everything, so it was okay. It was like this caringness, not just from the other patients, but from the staff as well. You wake up in the morning and you actually want to wake up because you know when you get downstairs there's going to be someone that asks you how you are and is genuinely concerned. Most of them are ex-addicts as well, so they've been there and they've shared their story with us and they genuinely care, and I never had that. Well, none of us did really. Some husbands and wives had that from their partners, but most of us didn't. And from parents who didn't really understand because they hadn't been there, whereas we were surrounded by people who knew exactly how we were feeling, which was probably different from the counselling I've had before from psychiatrists who have learnt it from a book and just have no idea and say things like, well, why don't you try doing this? I don't know, why don't I try doing that? Or, well, why don't you try stopping drinking? Or why can't you just eat like a normal person? Because I can't. I'm not very good at expressing myself with words, so we did this art thing, which meant that I could express myself in a way that they could understand me more. And we did this meditation-type Pilates thing, which meant that you had to sit still for a few minutes, which I found absolutely impossible, just the concept of having to lie there, breathing heavily, still. I could talk about myself for the first time, who I am, how I was feeling, what I'd been doing all these years. And when I'd tell them, it was like, they were like, yeah, okay. And it was like, yeah, great. Because they understood and I didn't really have to explain it to them because they just knew, and it was just like it was normality to them. It was just great. I wanted to stay there forever. Life is a million times better than what it was, but I still struggle with a lot of things. If I go on a date, there's going to be alcohol around, and so that restricts me. I'm never going to be the perfect girlfriend or the perfect friend, and I'm not going to try and do things which I find too difficult because that's just going to pose its own problems. But life is still challenging, but definitely more manageable now. And I've got a dog. I would say go. Don't think, go. Because you know whether you relapse or not. It's the tools that you learn when you're in there that is something that's going to help an addict in whatever future they're going to have.